So I'm gonna start from the top of my translation map. Translator as mediator slash creativity in the literal. It's a little bit of like an abstract phase, but I feel like the job of like a translator is kind of like it's kind of paradoxical in a way because you seek to be creative, but you have like constraints in a way because you have to like stay faithful to a certain degree to like an original text, but you can also like exercise a certain amount of like your own like what's the word I don't know, like your own like control over like the phrase or like the specific words or anything, but like it's kind of your choice. And then there's these two are kind of like I put tools here because these are kind of tools for translation. Cultural proficiency slash understanding and fluency in the language. I just thought like because you know that's part of the translation and you have to have not only just like historical background but also preferably like literary context. Like if this text is referring back to an earlier text, like you should have like a general understanding of what that is, like at least as much understanding as like most people in that culture would have. And the fluency in languages is like kind of self-explanatory, but it's kind of like you should like have experienced not just like the language on page, but also like the flexibility of the language, like in talking with people, in dialogue and everything. Next is the nature of the text, the genre, the voice that's used, and like the platform that it's going to be published on, because like now there's a lot of digital things, and so it that also like kind of changes how you want to like look at it and like what voice you want to use when you're translating it. Next I put faithfulness versus transplantation question mark because I wasn't sure of the correct word for it, but it's basically like, do you want to preserve the meaning or the specific phrase? I feel like that's like a thing that always comes up when you're translating. And then here it says, this might be a little redundant, but it says your personal relationship to the text. Like if you are like deeply passionate about it, which is like obviously preferable, but or if you're like kind of like translating it a little bit out of necessity. I did a translation job this winter break, and it was like translation, basically freelance translation by the hour, and that was like more out of necessity, and I didn't enjoy it as much, but money. Also, like within that same point, like you should be attached to the text, but not too much, because it's going to be very hard to translate if you're like very enamored with like the original. I put space here, or time. It's not like a weird sci-fi thing. It's that I really feel like you should like give the original text a certain amount of space and remove it from like your personal like point of view, and like try to look at it from a different perspective. And also it can mean like I found like in translating stuff that like time really helps. Giving yourself some space really helps with creative blocks when you're like, oh man, I have no idea, I can't like do this. You like giving yourself a little bit of space often helps. If you come back the next day or something, it's usually better. And the last point is finding resonance in or despite differences, usually in culture. So here I put a thing that says universal versus cultural versus individual, and there's like a certain, so there's always going to be, you know, cultural differences, but I feel like a lot of the point of translation is to find like a certain resonance despite the differences or in the differences. And I linked individual and universal because I feel like often on the individual level and the universal level, like if you're looking at the story of an individual person, it can often, you know, actually be very easy to understand because like human emotion is often universal, but it's also like on an individual level, if that makes any sense. But that is my whole map. I hope it's not too redundant. Yay.